The rain trying to come in but weakening as it does so. Ahead of it, rather grey skies, but we should hopefully see the cloud break up once again, maybe a little bit more widely compared to a Monday. And in any sunshine, it won't feel too bad out there, with most towns and cities across the country reaching low double figures, potentially up to 13 or 14 in the southeast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M60 clockwise at Junction 1 near Stockport, a road traffic collision is closing 2 of 3 lanes, with delays of around 50 minutes. Northamptonshire's M1 northbound between Junction 22 and Junction 23A is slow due to heavy congestion, with queues adding around 1.5 hours. In Kent, the A249 southbound between the A2500 and the A2 is also busy. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast has major disruption at Glasgow Central, and Chiltern Railways is disrupted between Prince's Risborough and London Marylebone. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
They really are. And William, of course, present at BAFTA. They were there, William and Catherine, to celebrate the best of British talent and creativity. And for the Princess, she hadn't done it for the last couple of years because of her cancer journey. So to have them back there with the full glam of the Princess wearing this beautiful floor-length Gucci dress on most of the front pages this morning perhaps shows the power that they do have in terms of celebrating British creativity. But we've got this elephant in the room, don't we? And that is what's happening with Andrew. And
well,
we've got William's comments on all the front pages.
Yeah, front page of The Sun, Wolves, I'm not in a calm state. Front page of my paper, The Daily Mail, exactly that. He would have wanted those words to be out there.
Very clearly at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. He was so uncomfortable stood next to him. He really was, refused to engage in any conversation. It was very obvious, William's point of view on that one. And I think for the British public, maybe the Waleses will be hoping that the public will judge those two, the future of the monarchy, on their actions and their dedication to service and duty, rather than the alleged alleged kind of conduct of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Do you think, reading through the lines, William is absolutely fuming about the whole thing, hates that he's been caught up in it at all, and I'm not in a calm state is a bit of a euphemism? I expect he wants to come out and say to journalists, look, it's nothing to do with me. Please keep me away from this. It's not my fault.
Yeah, I mean, William's been given a lot of opportunities over the last week since Andrew's arrest to release some kind of statement, and they've declined to do so. We've been told by sources close to William that, you know, he fully supports his father's statement, particularly when it comes to the law must now take his course. This is the King's statement following Andrew's arrest. I think for William, he is focused on the future and safeguarding the future of the monarchy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Monday the 9th of March, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, is there going to be panic at the pumps? Motorists brace for an all-time high at the petrol pump as the escalating conflict with Iran drives up global bill prices.
And the Prime Minister will today try to reassure people that the cost of living is at the forefront of his mind amid warnings the war could also push up household energy bills and food costs too. Earlier, GB News spoke to the Housing and Community Secretary, Steve Reed.
Whatever happens in the world, whatever crises come, the fact that we now have a more stable economy that's seen wages rising, national debt falling, inflation coming down, puts us in a better position to weather the storms, whatever they may be.
As oil reaches record-breaking levels, soaring past $100 a barrel, Donald Trump has claimed that this is a small price to pay for the eradication of Iran's nuclear program.
Now, universities that fail to prevent extremism will face sanctions and could be shut down. That's according to the government's new social cohesion strategy. In a GB News exclusive, we'll reveal the British universities where the students have been mourning their beloved Ayatollah.
And elsewhere, train passengers face major disruption after a huge fire that started in a vape shop has forced Scotland's busiest station, Glasgow Central, to shut.
It's the Strait of Hormuz, isn't it? It's that key waterway which takes 20% of oil. There's liquefied gas goes through there. It's key, and most, what is it, it's 150, 160 tankers and ships go through there every day. Barely 20 since the war started, and Iran is threatening to bomb, burn any ship that goes through. Trump says he'll send ships to escort them through, but that's where this economic crisis, the seeds of it, have been planted.
Absolutely. It's all about shipping insurance, isn't it? Because it's all very well for Trump to promise to escort those ships, but if those tankers can't get insurance, which they can't at the moment, then they won't travel. But, I mean, oil's already gone through $100 a barrel. Forecasters saying it's going to go to 150, even 200. The height of the Ukraine crisis, it was, I think, 120. So we're in for a long cost of living crisis.
And if you remember the short-lived Liz Truss premiership, she was coming up with a big scheme to help families pay their energy bills. Is the government going to have to consider something different?
Well,
and that is going to...
They can't afford to.
Well, it's going to wreck what's left of the government's economic strategy.
Absolutely. Very, very worrying times. We'll be bringing you the latest on that, but we love to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say, but first here's your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. Thank you very much. The headlines from the GB Newsroom. Iran has chosen Khamenei to succeed his father as the country's new supreme leader. He, a mid-ranking cleric with close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, was selected by Iran's 88-member Assembly of Experts. G7 nations will hold an emergency meeting today to discuss surging oil prices as crude jumped above $100 a barrel over the escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. A huge blaze has engulfed a building at Glasgow Central Station, causing it to partially collapse. All train services to or from the station's high level have been cancelled. National Rail said the station, which is Scotland's busiest, will be closed until further notice. No casualties have been reported. And a Clumber Spaniel named Bruin has been crowned Best in Show at Crufts 2026 at the NEC in Birmingham. Those are the latest headlines. More at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, any minute now, we're going to cross to the Prime Minister, who will assure us that the cost of living is at the forefront of his mind as Britain faces a potential energy crisis triggered by the ongoing Iran war.
Well, the conflict in the Middle East has caused a record-breaking spike in the price of oil, with the cost of a barrel of oil soaring now above $100 for the first time in years.
Brits have priced for all-time highs at the petrol pump, while household energy bills and food costs will also surge. That is an inevitable consequence, Miriam, of war in the Middle East. And, of course, we're seeing that Britain is... the Americans and Israelis are targeting Iranian oil facilities because that's the key to their economic survival.
Well, there are reports that the US is furious with Israel for targeting that oil depot, that wasn't in the jointly agreed plan. And also, not only does it potentially increase the cost of oil, but it also kind of gives Iran permission to start striking those kind of civilian infrastructures.
Well, let's talk to Angela Knight, who's a former chief executive of Energy UK. Angela, we spoke to you a week ago when this just had started, and we're now... the situation is much more perilous for all of us.
Yes, I would agree with that. It has developed in a way that I'm sure Trump didn't expect, and certainly we hoped would not. And right now, as you've been pointing out earlier, today on the news. The Strait of Hormuz, through which so much of the world's oil and gas goes, is effectively stopped. You can see that there's always an app for everything these days, and there's one that shows the marine traffic, and it's all either one side, empty, wanting to come through and fill up, or it's the other side where the tankers are there, they're full, but they can't get out. And we've got terminals now closing in the Gulf countries, and so that put all together is now much more concern that this is spreading out and will hit the economies of many more countries than just those around the Gulf than was the case a few days ago.
Angela, it really exposes how little we are prepared for these kind of crises, because not only have over the years the UK has gone from being an exporter of energy to an importer of energy, we've also obviously stopped buying Russian oil and gas for political reasons, the war in Ukraine. We haven't gone down the route of shale gas fracking like they have in the US. What we have done is built up a massive renewables sector. The government's saying that this is the answer. What do you think?
No, it's not the answer. I mean, it is part of what we should have as a country, a mixture of sources of your electricity supply. But at the same time, as the wind doesn't blow all the time, the sun doesn't shine all the time, you've got to have other forms of producing electricity, of which gas power stations are one which you can start up very quickly. And we don't, of course, we talked a lot about renewing nuclear, but we haven't really started a small-scale nuclear program at all, and it's taking a very long time to build any big new ones. That takes about 10 years. So are we exposed, question mark, and the answer to that is yes. One thing, though, that's just probably worth pausing on for a moment is that much of the oil and gas that comes out of the Gulf doesn't actually come to the UK, it goes east. So it's not actually, the immediate supply of oil and gas that is the problem in volume terms. It's the price, because the price goes up and down on what is happening in the world market. The world market is now taking much more fright about this crisis than it was a few days ago. The energy ministers or the chancellors or whatever are meeting, finance ministers are meeting to see if they can certainly release some of the supplies that are in various places around the world in storage. And certainly, of course, if at the start of the year, before all this commenced, the anticipation was that oil price would come down because there's a surplus, a global surplus. So there's something about what is there in store which can be let out steadily, and that'll impact the price. But the very fact here in the UK that we've not been exploiting properly our own reserves of gas in the North Sea, which after all is we are connected to a source of supply in a way that many countries aren't, that means that we're going to be badly affected by the world price of gas as well as by the world price of oil. And insulating ourselves from some of that
Angela, I'm sorry, we're going to have to interrupt you.
Angela,
I'm terribly sorry about to do this to you, but we've got to have to go live to the Prime Minister, who's speaking at a community centre in London. That was Angela Knight. Here's the Prime Minister.
Into its 9th day, and I know that people are watching that. They're concerned about that, and I wanted to reassure you about some of the measures that we're taking as a government. The first is the work we're doing with allies in the region, so the countries in particular that are under attack, many of the Gulf countries who obviously have played no part themselves in any attack on Iran are nonetheless being attacked. So as you would imagine, we're working very closely with them, helping with defensive capability. We've got fighter jets in there, and we've increased the capability there over the course of the last 9 days. Anti-drone devices, radar, and lots of other work that we're coordinating. And I've been speaking to all the leaders in the region, some of them a number of times over, to assess how they feel the situation is on the ground, what more we can do. These are allies, these are friends of our country we've been working with for many years. So that's what we're doing on that front. The second big issue is obviously we've got about 300,000 British nationals in the region. Some of them live there, have done for some time. Some of them were on holiday there, some of them were just changing planes, and they're all very concerned about the situation they're in. And I know that friends and family in this country are very, very concerned because they want to know that their loved ones are safe. So we're working with commercial airlines, working with all the countries involved to make sure that firstly people register their presence. 300,000 are there in the region, 120 something thousand have registered their presence. That means we're in touch with them and we can help them, give them information and advice. And where they want to come home, make sure that with commercial airlines and charter airlines, we're providing the means for them to get back. Not always easy because the airspace is closed in some places for some of the time, depending on the threat levels. But we got 35,000 back so far, and we're working, as you'd expect, around the clock in relation to those operations. The third area I just wanted to address, because I think as we go into this sort of what feels like the second week of this conflict, a lot of people are going to begin to think, well, that's happening out in Iran and in the Gulf states, but I can sense it's going to affect me back here in the United Kingdom, particularly the economy. We've done a lot of work recently on the cost of living, which we know is the #1 issue for so many people across the country, and an anxiety about that. On the reassurance front, I think it is important just to remind ourselves that last time a conflict began to develop, which was 2022, in relation to Ukraine, the economy wasn't in a stable place, and inflation was 5% and rising. We've done a lot of work in the last 18 months to put some resilience in and make sure that we've got some headroom, which is basically some insurance within the economy, but also inflation is 3% and going down. So in that sense, there's more resilience. But the job of government is obviously to get ahead, to look around the corner, to work with others. And the Chancellor speaks to the Governor of the Bank of England on a daily basis. We're looking cross-departmental within government, assessing the risks, monitoring, and talking to our international partners as well about what more we can do together to reduce the likely impact on people here and businesses here, of course. But it is important to acknowledge that that work is needed because people will sense, you will sense, I think, that the longer this goes on, the more likely the potential for an impact on our economy, impact into the lives and households of everybody and every business. And our job is to get ahead of that, to look around the corner, assess the risk, monitor the risks, and work with others in relation to that. And then the final thing I just wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to have a Q&A in a minute so I can get the benefit of your views, which will be really helpful from my point of view, is this really sad feature in many ways of a conflict like this, which is some people will try to use it to divide communities in this country and tear people apart. And we mustn't let that happen. I find one of the most powerful arguments that if you think of all the people who are stuck in the region, anxious about their own safety, wanting to get home, they come from all backgrounds. They come from all walks of life. And the last thing they want, or their families here want, is anybody trying to divide. Because this is a time when we need to come together as a country, stand behind our principles and our values, and not let people divide us. Put a lot of reassurance work in with both the Muslim community and the Jewish community in particular, because that's where people seek to try and find a divide. But we're also setting out our social cohesion plan today, which is a broader piece of work about how we bring people together as a country, make sure that we build on what we all care about, which is very much pride in our communities, pride in who we are as a country, pride, of course, in the places that we all come from. Everybody's got a pride about where they come from. And that real sense of making sure that we do integrate and we're one country standing together, particularly at a time like this. and that we bear down on extremism and division, because it's very important all the time to do that. It's particularly important at the moment. And so that's what we're doing as we turn into this week. So I think what you'll see is the focus going more to what impact might this have back in the United Kingdom. This will be happening across all countries, really, and really to reassure you about the work the government is doing to get ahead of that and to monitor the risk, assess the risk, and work with others across our own government, but actually with other countries. Part of the response at a time like this has to be constantly talking to leaders in other countries, particularly in the region, but also across Europe when it comes to the economy and other measures. So that's all I'll say for now. I think I've got some questions from you, so this is your chance. Anybody got any questions that they want to ask? I think we'll do the old-fashioned way of putting a hand up, if that's all right. Yes, I'll try and do a question behind me whilst facing this way. It's always a skill, but hopefully I can master it. I think we've got a microphone coming for you so you can be heard.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good morning. My question is, what are you doing to bring communities together in this world that is so divided, and what is in place?
Yeah, this is really important. I mean, it is a really sad feature, isn't it, of a time like this, that some people will try and use it as an opportunity to divide. So I think on two levels we're working. The first is we have to be really conscious that where people want to divide at the moment in relation to this conflict, it's in the space of trying to divide the Muslim community and the Jewish community. So we're working particularly on those two strands. There is a sort of broader cohesion plan that we've been working on for some time, which is not just a reaction to this conflict, obviously, is much broader, which is how do we bring the country together? One of my biggest concerns at the moment is that there's too many people in politics who want to set up grievances between different groups of people, to point fingers and divide and say that we can't be one country, we can't be one set of communities. I totally disagree with that. I think one of the great things about this country is we're a diverse country where we prove actually that different people can live alongside each other in a tolerant way with our values. And actually, that's more than just an observation on who we are as a country, it's what we are as a country. That is us. And we should hold that close, we should be proud of it. And so the cohesion plan is intended to make sure that everything is being put in place to support the work we're doing there. Let us go to another question. Yes, please.
So you plan to have a ban on social media for under 16-year-olds. Obviously, a lot of young people use social media and view it as an asset. How do you plan to actually consult young people more into policy making if this is a huge disagreements between you and young people?
Well, look, thank you for raising that. I see you've got My Life, My Say on, which is a great organisation that we've worked with for a long time. We're consulting on it, so no decisions have been made yet, and I want the voice of young people in that consultation. I'm very, very interested to hear.
How do you see that practically being happened, though?
Well, the consultation is just starting its course, so there are lots of ways you can get involved in that. I'll make sure my team give you all the details, but also we need to set up discussion points. Maybe with My Life, My Say might be one way of doing it, shouldn't be the only way of doing it. So we'll make sure that young people have their say. They must have their say in this, because there are different views here, and that's the whole point of the consultation. So thank you for raising that. Let me go across to this side of the room.
What are we doing about the housing crisis? What is being done about the housing crisis? There are 400,000 people homeless here in England alone. So
yeah, well, there are two separate strands here. One is homelessness, where we've put in a huge amount of investment to deal with homelessness, to get people into shelter, but also more than just into shelter, because for many people who've got homelessness issues, it's about the support that needs to go in as well, in terms of maybe health issues, work issues, etc. So there's the roof over the head element to it. That is vital, but on its own it's not enough. Then secondly, we need to take the pressure points off in relation to people being made homeless in the first place. One of the pressure points is no-fault evictions for renters, and so we're getting rid of that. This is where, until recently, people could be thrown out of their rented accommodation through no fault of their own, And then that puts a pressure on them and on local authorities, making sure that all the work we're doing on the cost of living is making sure people have more money in their pockets so they don't necessarily get into the difficulties in the first place. And so there's the preventative bit, but there's also, what do we do to support those who are homeless? There's a bigger picture here as well, which is we need to build more houses to make sure that everybody has a safe, secure place to grow up. Whether that's somewhere they're able to buy and own of their own, or whether it's the rented sector. We passed the Renters' Rights Act, which is the biggest piece of legislation for renters, giving them rights in a generation. 11 million people are in rented accommodation. We should never forget that, and they need better rights. So there's a lot of stuff we're doing in that space. I'm going to take one last question, and I'm going to go to the media, and then I'm going to come round to your tables so we can continue the discussion. Madam, if I may.
I work with young people who are at risk here. Do you mind if you need me to? Yes.
It's just otherwise we could.
Anxiety. I work with young people who are at risk here. The thresholds are really high for them to be helped, both of violence against them or children with special needs. Can you do something to get them the help at the right time so that they can go on to have better outcomes than they do?
It's vital that we do, and all of the evidence is absolutely clear that you need to intervene early, because if you miss those opportunities, it can take a lifetime before you can turn it around. So putting more resource in. We've got a youth strategy which was put together with young people. I'm really pleased. We didn't do a youth strategy with politicians in Whitehall deciding what the youth strategy should be. We actually got young people in as a steering group and advice group to do it, and they said they need more resource, they need more support in the activities that they want to do, need more mental health provision in schools and support. We're looking at the SEND, the special educational needs in schools, to see how we can improve there, but across the board we have to do more of that. I'll come back to you and have a discussion about it. Can I just go, I think we've got two questions from the media. Catherine, I think you first, and then we've got David here as well. Catherine.
Thank you, Prime Minister. President Trump has said, among other things, that he's disappointed in you, that you're no Churchill, and that gas and oil prices going through the roof is, quote, a small price to pay. It will feel to many people like the special relationship is in tatters. Were you able to begin to mend it in your phone call yesterday? And also, can you just reassure people that the government will have their backs on energy? Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me address a number of points there. The first is it's really important to emphasise that the US and the UK are working together every single day, as they always have. Obviously, in relation to Iran, the US are now using UK air bases under the agreement that we've reached. But more generally than that, intelligence is being shared every day. In the region, we have our military personnel and US military personnel co-located in the same places, in the same bases. And both the US and the UK are working together protecting those bases. So in terms of the relationship, the work that we necessarily have to do together is going on as you'd expect. I had a telephone call with President Trump yesterday talking about the conflict in Iran and the region and what we were doing together, and that was important in terms of the ongoing discussion. But the discussion with our US counterparts is happening at all levels, all of the time, every single day. That's the nature of the relationship. What I would say is this, is that decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make. It is really important, that's a fundamental principle, that it is the UK Prime Minister, who everybody expects, the people of the United Kingdom would expect, that the UK Prime Minister would make the decisions using our values, our principles, in the best interest of our country. And it's really important that we are very, very clear about that principle. we're obviously working more generally with leaders and allies across the region, both in relation to the defensive work that needs to go in and in relation to the work to get people out of the region. Very many British nationals are there. So thank you for that. David, can I come to you?
Thanks very much, Prime Minister. Yeah, just want to ask about, you've come here today to acknowledge the cost of living pressures that this situation in Iran could present for people here in this room and across the country. They're going to be worried about their pockets and the effect on the money in their pockets. What practical steps might we actually see from the government to help people across the country? Are we going to see something similar to the state intervention that came in after the price spikes caused by the Ukraine war, for example? And I just want to ask one other thing about Donald Trump as well. A year ago, roughly speaking, the US president had Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, and there was that dust-up, which I think we all remember quite clearly. At the time, he suggested that Ukraine was gambling with World War III. Is the US president now gambling with World War III?
Let me address both of those issues. Firstly, the cost of living, because I am acutely aware that across the country, the number one issue is still the cost of living. People being concerned about whether they've got enough money to pay the bills and the anxiety that it causes if you can't pay the bills. And when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money in my family. We had occasions where we literally sat around the kitchen table because we couldn't pay the bills. I know personally what that feels like, and therefore I know what people in this country are going through. That's why in the 18 months or so we've been in government, we've done so much on the cost of living, because where we can take the pressure out, whether that's improving wages in the first place, whether that's taking money off energy bills, which we've been able to do, freezing rail fares, prescription charges, free school meals, free childcare. All of these are intended measures to try and ease that pressure. I'm not going to pretend that that pressure's gone away or that any of these are silver bullets, but each of them plays a part in helping on the cost of living. So I do understand the anxiety now at 9 days into this conflict, where a number of people will be saying, well, now is the situation going to get worse, and how's it going to impact me and my family? At the moment, what we're doing is monitoring the risk, working with others to mitigate the risk. The Chancellor is talking to the Bank of England every day to make sure that we're ahead of that. I would just say on energy prices, for households, the energy price cap is in place until June, and therefore we're not anticipating that is going to change, which will give a degree of reassurance. But of course, businesses and others will be concerned to watch carefully what's going on. Thank you very much on that. In relation to the conflict in Iran, look, it is important that we do everything we can to protect international allies in the region, particularly those who are neighbouring countries who've played no part in any of the offensive actions. So there are many in the region who are being subjected to strikes, missiles and drones, even though they played no part. And that is a threat to civilians, it's a threat to our civilians who are in the region, it's a threat to our personnel who are in the region, our military personnel, and of course to the people living there. And therefore it's right for us to be working with those countries to put in as much capability as we can to deal with those incoming missiles, deal with those incoming drones, and make sure we take down the threat assessment there. More generally, and in answer to your question, we do need to find a way to de-escalate the situation, and that's what a lot of our discussions are about. How do we find a way to de-escalate this situation and make sure it doesn't escalate even further than it already has. Thank you very much. I'm going to now sit down. I think this looks like the empty chair, so I'll come here first and then move around, and I'll come back to you on your questions.
At a community centre in London, we have our two political heavyweights here. Chris Hope, our political editor, and Mark White, our home and security editor. No, not at all. Not at all, not at all.
Do you like a biscuit?
Yes. Chris. the Prime Minister?
Well, that was interesting. You had the PM there saying that as a UK Prime Minister, he's making his decisions using our values and principles in the best interest of our country, and that is where the debate's going. I just look at what Reform UK did yesterday with Robert Jenrick saying in a TV interview that we don't see the cause for UK to be deploying our personnel offensively. I just wonder whether the public is moving to where Starmer was. I mean, Starmer has completely, I think, he cocked up the relationship completely with someone like Donald Trump. But given the chaos in the Middle East and given how there's no obvious apparent, it's not clear what the goals are of the US, maybe pausing on this is maybe where the public is going towards. But I think he has absolutely looked like he's been led by it. He hasn't... If you're in diplomacy, there's a way of holding that position but being supportive towards Trump.
But also I think that the challenge that he has is that actually the public is broadly supportive of the UK not getting involved defensively, but he has made himself, or rather our country, look weak because of the defence decisions that have been made, not sending the ship, not being ready, not knowing what to do about the bases.
And there's an overnight interview from a Trump ally saying that we were blindsided on that. And that's a worry. I mean, he talks there about the levels of a special relationship going all the way through every level of government and administration. But why weren't we told, get your warships out there because you want to protect Akrotiri?
And Mark White, I mean, we know that the President first talked to the Prime Minister 17 days before the war started about could he use the bases. So that was a red flag, it was an alert. You would have thought the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defence, Foreign Office would be thought that could be an issue for our bases, such as Akrotiri, Bahrain. There was no provision made whatsoever.
No, and that, I think, is the big blunder here, was the denial of the Americans' use of these vital bases. Why on earth do we allow them to have bases in the first place if we're then adding such restrictions to it? That doesn't mean, you know, we have to go in an offensive manner, although I would argue now the moment that Iran struck British sovereign territory in the form of RAF Akrotiri, also, of course, the naval facility in Bahrain, put our hundreds of thousands of citizens under threat by attacking the Gulf states, we then have an obligation to go in and knock out the launchers that are putting these deadly weapons over to these vital interests in the first place. Because, as Kemi Badenoch says, I think she's absolutely right here, there's a real danger in trying to catch missiles and drones that have already been launched. You can miss, even if you actually impact the missile to take it out. There's then all of this sort of debris that rains down on people below. That's actually the debris has been responsible for more deaths than actual direct missile impacts.
And he got there eventually. He started to... That was the idea that Keir Starmer last week started taking out those rocket launchers, but it took him a crucial, really, a delay, didn't he, of 4 or 5 days to get to that position. And now our warships are in the wrong place. He looks on the back foot.
Well, we still don't even have HMS Dragon setting sail yet.
I know, it's embarrassing.
Tomorrow at the earliest, maybe Wednesday.
And talk that the aircraft carrier, if it does go, will be escorted by the French. It's just not another humiliation.
I mean, can they even send the aircraft carrier now, given the humiliating rebuke from Donald Trump saying, don't bother?
Don't bother.
Yeah.
Draws in stark contrast the spending choices by this government. Last week's spring statement, $400 billion on benefits by the end of the decade. A fraction of that would pay for some more warships.
And I think that this is what this whole sorry episode actually highlights, the way in which our armed forces have been completely hollowed out by successive governments, we have to say. That's come home to roost now, because what you have is the decision makers, the politicians, in conjunction with the military, deciding that the priority is to go on naval exercises in the North Atlantic and the High North, as opposed to entering what could be a hot war. That's the decision they made, and clearly now they're regretting that decision, which is why they're getting HMS Dragon ready to go into a hot war.
If we were going off to defend Greenland from a non-existent threat.
Well, listen, you could absolutely argue, of course there is a threat from Russia. You want to show a presence up there, but is an exercise, which is in all likelihood going to be cancelled anyway because of what is happening out in the Middle East, the priority? Surely it's to get your assets down there. Not even if it's not in an overt manner to go and bomb Iran, then it should be that defensive posture to ensure that we're protecting our allies and we're protecting the likes of RAF Akrotiri.
Well, we do actually have a clip of the Prime Minister speaking about that special relationship. Let's hear what he had to say.
decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make.
Very much the line that Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper was taking yesterday, and I think quite effectively.
But he says all his decisions as Prime Minister are about the national interest, and yet at the same time we know from the leaked discussions from the Security Council that actually all the decisions are taken about what complies with international law.
I know, that's the problem. From the very beginning, I think they were far too legalistic about this. Your point about, Mark's point about using the bases, they should have found a way of saying yes to that, both Diego Garcia and also the base in the UK for doing those attacks.
But Christopher, even now, when they've said, yes, you can use the bases, it's with one hand tied behind the Americans' back. You can only use the bases to go after those missile launchers and drone launchers. You can't use it for your decapitation strikes or to go after kind of key buildings that the regime functions from.
Let's not forget, going back to your point about Greenland, the reason why we were going to deploy to Greenland was because Trump might invade it. I mean, if you forget where we've come in the past 6 weeks, but the idea then had been to show that we also want to look after Danish interests in the high north.
But that whole point about international law, when the Prime Minister was in the chamber last week in that crucial debate, who was standing above him, towering down, looking down at him from Lord Herman?
In his eye line.
In his eye line. It reminded me of that moment during the King's speech when the King finally is speaking to the nation for the first time, George VI, and his wonderful voice coach is literally feet away from his face, talking him through it. And that's what's happening here with the Prime Minister. Lord Herman pulls every single string.
And others too.
An unelected...
He looks pushed around in that leaked briefing from the National Security Council, which is a huge issue, by the way, in Whitehall.
Ed Miliband, and now we hear the Home Secretary piled in too.
Which is interesting, because
it is a worry, isn't it? It's a worry when you have a government whose first instinct is to immediately go to the lawyers rather than to the military to see, you know, what we need to do, what we can get in place.
Sorry, Mark, just quickly. The next pressing political problem for Starmer is not actually going to be defence, it's going to be about cost of living. Can you explain briefly what's happening with regards to the oil tankers, why they can't get through and what might need to happen to change that?
Well, you've got an issue in the Strait of Hormuz where even though the Americans have said they have disabled and sunk so many of Iran's major naval ships, you still have a threat from Iran. You've got onshore potential to launch missiles, even shoulder-launched missiles shipping. You've got thousands of these little craft, these little vessels that are heavily armed for the size of them, that can zip in and out and cause real harm to the shipping that's going through there. So nothing is really transiting the vital Strait of Hormuz into the oil and gas terminals there. Add to that the fact that in recent days we've seen a number of oil and gas installations in several of these Gulf states targeted or struck by Iranian munitions and fires as a result. All of that is adding to the jitters. Also the fact, of course, that we're now into the second week and the Iranian regime is still fighting back, is still launching missiles and drones. That's being factored in to the oil markets, and clearly the concern is being shown in the price, which hit, I think, $100 per barrel of crude, which is just dipped below it again, but clearly there's still a lot of concern.
Angela Knight was telling us, the former head of UK oil, that there are large supplies of oil and gas which can be untapped.
Yes.
If necessary. But that won't have an impact on the price.
Well, and you wonder why that would be then, if there are you know, huge reserves that are being centrally sort of stored that can then go out onto the international oil and gas markets. Why is the price rocketing?
Well, I think
and I don't know that because I'm not an economist.
Their storage tanks are full because they're not being taken away by ships. So some of the oil-producing nations are now actually stopping producing oil, which is going to have very long-term
The impact's likely on the petrol pump and not on heating at home because of the cap.
But that run doesn't...
Until April.
Until April.
Yes. June 3rd.
Which is only next month.
That is a good point. Already in March.
June,
Mark, Chris, thank you so much.
It may be June, but it's going to completely... That spring statement the Chancellor made last week was redundant before she even stood up and spoke.
It is out of date already. Chris, Mark, thank you so much for your contribution. We'll see you later on in the programme.
Now, one of the measures Keir Starmer's unveiled as part of what he calls his social cohesion plan is clamping down on extremists in Britain. We're joined now by Lord Warney, who is a former advisor to the government on political violence, who has produced a report identifying 30 organisations in this country with links to the Iranian regime.
Good morning, Lord Warney. Thank you so much for joining us. And what do you make of this report?
I think that the social cohesion strategy that's coming out today is necessary. We've all yet to see the details, but to an extent, whatever is written down is necessary, but it's not going to be sufficient unless there is a culture change of action that underpins it. Now, I really welcome the fact that the government is saying that the Charity Commission is going to get extra powers and an increased focus on extremism, because that's been one of the key findings of my report that's coming out this week, which has showed that at the moment the organisation takes far too long and is showing real weakness in failing to tackle Iranian-related and other extremist charities. But so many people looking at this know that we have had a succession of counter-extremism strategies, plans to tackle problems that don't actually result in the culture change that we need. So that is what we have got to push now.
Lord Warney, some of our viewers will be astonished that we can have registered charities in this country that are nevertheless funding extremism or espousing extremist views. How has this come about?
Yes, absolutely. It is an entirely valid question. It is extraordinary. You have a number of charities that openly align themselves with the deeply extreme, deeply conservative. And let's remember, is the chief exporter into these shores. And what I think we have, what we've seen is an organisation which is in the Charity Commission regulated,
Unfortunately,
we had a very bad line there. I'm afraid we're going to try and get back to Lord Warney. Fascinating that some of these organisations revere the Ayatollah, who was taken out by the Israelis. Vicious old bigot. Yeah. That's an understatement.
There are some quite good recommendations in this report, but people are asking questions as to why, at the same time, the government's decided to appoint this anti-Muslim hostility czar.
Why do we need one?
And whether it or not is to try to win back the Muslim vote after Gorton and Denton, or whether they just want to shield themselves from accusations.
Do we have an anti-Jewish hatred czar?
Yes.
Right. So I suppose they'll say it equates, they're evening it up?
I suppose so. It's all about equality, Andrew.
Right, well, we'll see. Now, the Prime Minister was speaking, we will try and get back to Lord Warney, by the way. The Prime Minister asserted this morning the cost of living is at the forefront of his mind as the potential energy crisis comes closer because of the Iran war.
The longer this goes on, the more likely the potential for an impact on our economy, impact into the lives and households of everybody and every business.
Well, the founder of Fairfuel UK, Howard Cox, joins us now. Howard, good morning. Nice to see you again. Obviously, very, very worrying times to do with the whole cost of living, the impact of the oil crisis, but particularly for motorists. What do you anticipate will be the increase in petrol prices at the pumps?
Well, I predicted last week when I was on your show that, we're going to hit over $100, and that will put something like 20 pence per litre onto filling up. So the average family car will have to spend something like £10 more to fill up their car. The worst thing, though, Miriam, is, of course, the logistics industry. We're looking at trucks, doing 7 miles to the gallon. It's going to add £100 to £200 per tank full. And guess who's going to be paying for that? The consumer, all the way down the line. And that's the problem. And I think we're going to hit $120 in the next week. And I think that's in the realms of a national recession. And it'll hit every part of the economy. That's inflation, GDP, jobs, business investment and again, consumer spending. People will have to make a decision not to go out and have a lunch or something, or go to the pub or something like that, because they can't afford to get there, is one thing. And I'm going to be launching something later in the week, which I'll let you have, a survey on what people are actually making a choice between saving. And we're seeing people who've got having radiotherapy and chemotherapy, instead of going once a week, they're going every 2 weeks now because they can't afford to get there. This is the sort of thing we're facing. And the worst thing about this, Andrew and Miriam, is the opportunistic profiteering at the pumps.
I was going to ask you about that, Howard. Is that already happening?
Absolutely right. I mean, existing stocks, obviously they're being filled up now, but existing stocks 3 days ago, prices went up on prepaid prices before the crisis. And that's disgusting. And as I think I told you, I worked very closely with Claire Coutinho, the Minister of Energy, when she was the Tory Minister of Energy. A great, in my opinion, a great MP, very good indeed. And I've tried to get Labour to listen to this as well. We've got to have a pump watch body to stop this opportunistic profiteering. So we're being hit on two fronts: high taxation and, of course, this profiteering. And I think there's a debate in Parliament today on fuel prices, and what I hope that she will actually announce there will be no increase in fuel duty later this year, and preferably, why not cut it for three months in this oil crisis? That would show some fiscal common sense.
Well, in a sense, it would make sense, because the higher the price goes, Howard, disastrous as it is for consumers, the government get more tax revenue.
Yes, that's the lovely thing. That's obviously so they can spend more money on welfare and all those sorts of things. The simple thing here at the moment is we've got to have some sense, because they want growth, they want inflation lower. Those two things, I understand, is their mantra. But we're not seeing it at all yet. And she didn't do it, as you quite rightly pointed out, Andrew. Last week's fiscal statement, or financial statement, is dead. It's null and void as far as I'm concerned. And the messages I'm getting from people, drivers, logistics industry, small businesses, people like plumbers and electricians, they are suffering big time. And guess who? They have to put prices up. I mean, in many cases, they can't, because they won't get any business. It's a catch-22 situation, and Rachel Reeves could solve this.
Well, potentially she could help by cutting fuel duty, as you said. But if we look more broadly at energy prices, of course, the government will be tempted to issue some sort of bailout, as happened under Liz Truss, or attempted to happen. And, of course, similar bailouts during COVID in terms of supporting people's incomes. These things were very welcome at the time. But whenever the government prints money or uses quantitative easing, we always pay for it in massive inflation afterwards. And frankly, the economy is at a point where I'm not sure we can take that kind of inflation. Do you think the government will take a more conservative approach to this, or will they just start printing money again to support people's bills?
Well, I think that would be suicidal, printing money. They shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. You're absolutely right, Miriam. You've got common sense. The point is that people have to go to work. They have to drive. They have to deliver things to businesses. We've got an internet economy where we're relying on deliveries to the front door now, food all the way through to luxury goods, etc. This is our economy now, and the cost of goods. When you look at a trucking business with about 50 trucks, 40% of their costs are fuel. Now, of that fuel, something like 60% of that is tax. So give them a bit of a break, and maybe just try for 3 months, 6 months with fuel duty cut by 20 pence. And I'm calling on all parties to back this. I don't care what left wing or right wing. Please, adhere to this particular call from Fairfield UK. I represent 1.7 million supporters, and they are crying out for some sanity.
Well, Howard, you're often there first. Very interesting idea. That's Howard Cox from Fairfield UK. I don't think the government will do it.
No, but it is the wise thing to do. They could reduce the price without borrowing any more money.
Exactly, and it still won't impact their revenue coming in.
No, absolutely. As long as the petrol companies, the oil companies, bring the prices down.
Yeah.
As if they keep them high, then it's a wasted move.
Well, we saw prices going up last week, and I'm glad Howard mentioned it. I thought, how can these be up already?
On pre-bought fuel. Yeah, very opportunistic.
Rip off Britain. Now, up next, almost a quarter of Labour MPs are going to defy the government's plans to drastically cut the right to trial by jury. That's the brainchild of that political titan David Lammy, our Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We have a couple of days of training before the opening ceremony starts, and then as soon as that finished, we packed up all our bags and we left for Germany. So we went out of the village for like 4 or 5 days.
Did you? Right.
Yeah. So we have a bit of a training camp away from that, so we can get some better food and a bit of a better routine instead of having all the distractions around the Olympics. And then we came back in ready for our official training.
So the food wasn't so great in the Olympic Village? Is this what we're getting from this?
It wasn't for me, no.
Okay.
It was okay. I lost a decent amount of weight during this time there, but some people enjoyed it, other people struggled. But it's just the same thing every day for a 3-week period. It gets a bit monotonous.
Now, let's see, 2-man Bob and 4-man Bob. It was 7th in the end for you, and you did us proud, and we always love to see you and see you representing your country, and you do a great job. But the Germans, I mean, we were talking about this Monday or Tuesday, and Ellie was saying to me, why is it? So how is it that the Germans are so good at bobsleigh? I know you've had wins against them, but it's just this domination. Why is it? I'm saying it's the Vorsprung Dirk Technik maybe of the bob, or is it the athletes? What is it about the Germans?
There's a combination of everything. So they run their program very, very well. So they have a lot of funding that comes in, and they have 4 of their own tracks. They have the push tracks where you practice physically and push in the summer. They have probably 15 or 20 of those dotted around the country when we only have 1. So they do everything to the best of their ability. So they maximise absolutely everything. So that's why they're so good. So we do pretty well considering what we have available to us. But it's still we're up against it when we go against the Germans. But they do everything phenomenally well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good morning. It's 22 minutes past 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
We have our panel. We've got the political commentator Claire Muldoon and journalist Judith De Silva in the studio. Now, David Lammy, he is pioneering, pushing ahead with his plans to drastically restrict jury service, Claire, because he says...
In England and Wales.
In England and Wales. We've got to speed up the wheels of justice. I don't think it would make any difference whatsoever, restricting jury trials.
It really won't. What they have to do, what they should have been doing, is investing in the bricks and mortar of our courthouses, as was, it's not news. They were told, the justice system were told, they need to rectify the crumbling courthouses that we have that disable judges and indeed justices and panels to sit in judgment for criminals, basically. That's what they should have been doing. Their eye was completely off the ball. This is not just a Labour problem, I have to say, but David Lammy is he's not even doing anything to help the system work and the cogs work easily by removing jury services, and it's just going to condemn more people, I think, to prison, which we don't even have the space for.
Judith, I'm surprised that the government is actually pushing ahead with this vote, because in the past, when they've smelled a rebellion and thought that they could either potentially lose a vote or at least be wounded, they've pulled the vote and changed the policy, but they're not going to do it this time.
I mean, they've been called
accused constantly of flip-flopping. So once you do something, at least it's a move forward to just stick it out and see the consequences. But I understand the idea behind it, because if you think about the kinds of cases for renewal of visas or rights to stay, it's just a judge and you make your case, and they churn through so many every day. So with a backlog, I think it's about 30,000 cases still waiting. He's assuming that if we apply that model, we'll leave it at the judgment of the judge. We can churn through them that quickly. But you've got a situation where there's already problems with defendants who don't have good representation. And there has been that suggestion from Sir Brian Levison, where you say have a judge and 2 magistrates. That's a happy medium. He's not even considering that. So it looks like you're doing a disservice to the people at their most desperate points who have need for the sake of administrative speed. And that's just a bad look for a Labour government.
And also some of the analysis suggests that because so few trials are by jury anyway, and the use of the jury in itself is not that much of a factor, potentially this reform could only save 2% of time, which isn't really that worthwhile.
I think it's also optics. You want to be seen to be active, proactive, and doing something revolutionary. But also, there is the point that picking a jury takes time. And people normally have to drop out. So he's trying to think, like, where can I shave time anywhere? This just isn't practical for the kind of dividends you want to yield.
But it's also a rather fundamental part of our system.
Democracy, our justice system, to be tried by your peers.
Yeah, that's the point here.
It is, absolutely. You know, and I've been called for jury service twice, actually, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's a rich fabric of people out there that can take the time, and you see things through different lenses, through different coloured lenses, through different religious lenses, and it's fascinating to watch and be part of something like that. It's a privilege. It really is.
And also, but part of the reason the legal process is everything so delayed is, Claire, is because trials are now much more complicated because they have so much more evidence because of mobile phones and emails, which all have to be gone through far more forensic detail.
There are, and added to that, the pressure of, you know, I want to leave. You know, so they'll put force to the judge that, oh, we can't continue with this. We need a day's leave. We need a day's rest. All these days, you know, add up. People just think people in the court systems work from 10 till 4. That's not the case at all. They're often in there from 8 in the morning to well past 6 in the evening. The solicitors work damn hard as well, as do the KCs and the silks.
As well as think about that number of backlog also includes appeals, because someone felt they weren't represented with enough zeal by their representative, or they felt there was a miscarriage of justice. This also opens the window to everyone has a right to actually, as you said, be judged by a jury of their peers. If you fast-track that and bypass that, they have grounds for an appeal. You've created a new case.
It just seems like, you know, the tin ear of the Prime Minister again and the Cabinet thinks this looks good. The optic is so bad.
You do have to delegate and trust in who you delegate to.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're accused of micromanaging because you don't trust your administration. So
I would not delegate to David Lammy.
You don't like him in general.
I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's very good.
David Lammy, right, is Foreign Secretary. You would think he would know where a map of the world is. He couldn't even map out a woman's uterus. He didn't know where that was.
He also did declare last week twice in an interview that Cyprus is part of NATO, which it isn't.
Come on, I know.
Politically, what will happen if the government does get defeated for the majority of goodness knows what?
I think that if they get defeated, it's a very sick kind of thing, because you have the justification for not doing this.
Yes, true.
So it's almost like you've given because you're either accused of not taking action. When you take action, I don't like the action.
You can blame it on the backbenchers.
Yeah, it's a political play as well. So I tried to do something revolutionary. You didn't want it. That's why it's not being done. We have to now go and find something else. Or you can't say I'm wasting time because we're trying to find something else because you didn't want this. Every politician is always making a play to make themselves look like I'm working, but they're not being held responsible for the work that's being done.
I think that's a too sophisticated analysis for this current government.
Can we talk about the Commonwealth? Are you a big supporter?
I mean, it's there. I know it's there, but, you know, I wouldn't go away waving any flags for it or anything like that. And, of course, this is on the back of today, the BBC crying over the fact that they don't have enough funding to film the Westminster Abbey Commonwealth service today with the royal family.
Well, how many people have they sent to cover the Winter Olympics?
The Winter Olympics was great, actually. It was very good.
Yeah. Good. Well, very good. I mean, I didn't.
Very good-looking athletes, I must say.
Oh, so
definitely worth the coverage.
Should the state broadcaster broadcast this live?
The fact that you've broadcast it since 1989 and you only dropped it in 2021 due to coronavirus, it's a legacy transmission. But what this should make everyone do is really listen to what all of us behind the scenes talk about, which is the death of legacy broadcasting. Because the way people consume...
Death of the monarchy, maybe?
OK, let's save that conversation for later. But they haven't got the money. For the great BBC hasn't got the money because most people now want to watch Netflix and Prime. They don't feel the need to pay the
Well, they lost
licence
£1 billion
fee.
last year in people refusing to pay the licence fee.
They don't
I know
watch
so many
TV.
of my friends don't pay it because they say they don't watch it, so I pay it. That is
So
the
the
problem, isn't
BBC
it?
is really suffering, even though it doesn't look like it.
It does tell you everything you need to know about the death of culture and the dumbing down of broadcasting. I mean, it says that instead of a Commonwealth Day service, viewers of BBC One on Monday afternoon will see a Canadian couple being shown dream homes in Scotland.
Yeah, so we've got Canada, part of the Commonwealth, and Scotland, obviously, part of the Commonwealth too. So they are actually
But they're doing their
broadcasting. They're doing their
bit of lip
bit.
service.
Absolutely.
But, escape to the country.
But
or a bit of history.
This is the biggest gathering of the royal family
Yeah.
since the implosion of Andrew Mountbatten.
And they need the optics very much to show a united front.
This is what we do. This is what we're good at. The Commonwealth, very important, multicultural, 56 countries. Would Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie be there, in your view? Should they be there?
You know, they always said that the Queen had a very soft place for Beatrice, particularly. And remember, she wore her wedding dress where they had that private ceremony. There is a lot of love within the family for the position those two girls are in, because it's through no fault of their own that they happen to have quite cataclysmically badly behaved parents. So there's a need to protect them, but also the knock-on effect of them being around. It might be seen as just be with your husbands, be with your kids, and just lay low for a while. And they probably want that because they've pulled back as well.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Claire?
Absolutely. I don't think they should be there anyway, and I think it would exercise very, very poor judgment on their behalf if they actually went and appeared. And, you know, back to print journalism, that is a legacy journalism, but we'll see the pictures of that today in tomorrow's press, which will be nice to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Very good.
Oh, thank you both. And in the next hour, what are we talking about? The collapse of the monarchy?
Monarchy, yes. OK, I'll do my
Angie. But first, we're going to get our 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories. The Prime Minister has defended his response to the crisis in the Middle East after repeated criticism from US President Donald Trump.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make.
It's as G7 nations will hold an emergency meeting today to discuss surging oil prices as crude jumped above $100 a barrel over the escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. Meanwhile, Iran has chosen Mojtaba Khamenei to succeed his father as the country's new supreme leader. He's a mid-ranking cleric with close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, was elected by Iran's 88-member assembly of experts. Scotland's busiest railway station is closed all day after a major blaze in which part of a building next door to it collapsed last night. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Up next, in a GB News exclusive with the Henry Jackson Society, we'll reveal the British universities where the students are mourning their beloved Ayatollah. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, most of us were going to start off with plenty of cloud and maybe some outbreaks of rain and drizzle in places. But for some of us, we will see some brighter skies later on this afternoon. But out there for this morning, plenty of cloud around, maybe some early brightness across parts of Scotland. Elsewhere, the cloud thick enough in places, especially across western and northern areas, to produce some outbreaks of rain. But as the afternoon goes on, the cloud will begin to thin, especially down towards East Anglia and southeast England, allowing some sunshine to possibly develop here. And if it does, we could see potentially highs reaching 16 or 17 degrees. So moving into the evening hours, again, we could see some late sunshine across East Anglia and the southeast, but elsewhere across England and Wales, it's going to be a rather grey end to the day. Again, some outbreaks of rain and drizzle in places. Very similar for Northern Ireland and Northern England. But across parts of Scotland, we may well just start to see some cloud breaks develop across northwestern parts, and again, allowing some late sunshine to develop here. Into the overnight period, again, plenty of cloud around, some mist and murk also developing. But as the night goes on, we'll start to see the next band of rain approach from the west, again, weakening as it does so. So really just mainly focused across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland as we start Tuesday morning. But for most of us, another fairly mild start to the day. I think most towns and cities not much lower than about 5 to 7 degrees. And Tuesday really is a repeat performance, this next band of rain trying to come in but weakening as it does so. Ahead of it, rather grey skies, but we should hopefully see the cloud break up once again, maybe a little bit more widely compared to a Monday. And in any sunshine, it won't feel too bad out there, with most towns and cities across the country reaching low double figures, potentially up to 13 or 14 in the southeast.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M6 southbound in Staffordshire, a broken-down vehicle between junction 15 and junction 14 has one lane closed, with normal conditions expected by 10:30 this morning. In Oxfordshire, the M40 southbound between junction 9 and junction 8A is shut after a road traffic collision. In Devon, the A30 westbound between the A377 and the A382 has a lane closed following a crash. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast has major disruption at Glasgow Central, and Chiltern Railways is disrupted between Princes Risborough and London Marylebone. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 24 minutes to 11. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom.
Well, this is pretty shocking, I think. At least 28 student societies across UK universities have posted tributes and organised commemorations mourning the death of Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Well, the findings come as the government has announced new measures aimed at tackling extremism and radicalisation on British campuses, including updated guidance requiring greater risk checks on external speakers.
Well, joining us now is Research Fellow from the Henry Jackson Society, Emma Schubert. Emma, universities should be contentious places and places of learning and places of debate, but it's repulsive to think that so many are celebrating, or mourning rather, the demise of one of the most infamous, notorious, undemocratic leaders of modern times.
Right. And of course, we support the freedom of expression at these universities. But the dark irony, of course, is that these students are mourning one of the most violent repressors of the freedom of expression on the planet. So we think that's particularly shocking.
And like we're saying, we support free speech. But on the other hand, Iran is a nation that we are, not officially at war with, but nevertheless, we know that Iranian agents operate in Britain. We can see the impact of some of the state-sponsored terrorist groups in the Middle East, Hamas, Hezbollah, also operating in Britain. We might not be directly at war with Iran, but nevertheless, the idea that British people, British students, could be mourning the loss of someone who is our sworn enemy, I mean, that's a national security threat.
Right. As you say, we know of at least 20 foiled terrorist plots by the IRGC on British soil. So it really is a national security issue if we start seeing universities, societies mourning the leader of the state of sponsors of terrorism worldwide. Also, another point is, almost all of these universities receive some form of public funding. So this is another question that we are hoping the Secretary of State for Education and the Home Secretary answer for us, as well as the leaders of these universities.
And have these gatherings been spontaneous, or are there other groups behind the idea to mourn him in public?
It's a good question. It looks like, from what we've seen, there's a consistent pattern. There's this, one type of Islamic society called ABSOCs, which seem to be coordinating across the UK these mourning, commemorative, honorific events for the late Ayatollah. So there does seem to be an element of coordination, and we hope that the government takes that very seriously.
So how are they? I'm sure you'll be able to name some of these universities shortly, Emma. But how are these events manifesting themselves? Are they demonstrating placards, or what sort of events are they having?
So mostly they're advertising their events on social media.
Right.
Mostly Instagram. These ABSOCs, these Islamic societies, usually work together to do some sort of outreach event. Come join us to honor the Ayatollah or to mourn in this difficult time. So it's usually in-person events and statements plastered across social media. Now, we've identified almost 30, but we have a website that we have launched this morning that we are hoping that members of the public can use. You can see if your university actually had a society that mourned the Ayatollah. And if you think that we really ask you to let us know.
And is there any resistance within the universities to these celebrations?
So far, I haven't seen any.
Wow.
We're waiting for universities to get back to us. We did write a letter to UCL. We're waiting for a response from them.
That's one of the ones where a commemoration took place?
That's correct. That's correct. One of their Islamic student societies mourned the Ayatollah, or seemed to mourn the Ayatollah. So we're waiting for a response from them, among others. I'm not aware of any university that's taken any kind of decisive action against these groups so far.
It's not against the law. Are you saying it should be?
Well, this is the issue. Because the entirety of the IRGC is not prescribed in this country yet, it's very difficult to go after any kind of group that supports it. So this is a really serious legal loophole.
And you say these are largely organised by Islamic societies. Are there any non-Muslims joining in with these events? And do you think they know the full extent of the crimes of the Iranian regime?
That's very difficult to say. I don't know the makeup of every single member of these societies, but we do know that across different issues, whether it's pro-Palestine groups or pro-IRGC groups, there do seem to be a lot of useful idiots. That's that's very true. I don't know the extent of their participation in this.
Because some of the other issues that those those groups campaign on, things like women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, even environmentalism, are all the antithesis of what the regime stands for.
Right, it's extremely ironic. I mean, we've seen some of these student groups have come out and said, mentioned counter statements. We have the freedom to do this because whatever. But it's deeply, darkly ironic because, of course, they're celebrating the antithesis, as you say.
What happens next with this report?
Well,
the Education Secretary's got a copy?
Well, we've written to the Department of State and the Department of State for Education and the Home Secretary. Right now we're asking members of the public to help us identify these organizations. We have a website right now, as I mentioned, that you can search to see if your local university has mourned the Ayatollah, and we have a button that you can click if you think we've missed one.
Very good. And just briefly, zooming out from this, what do you think the impact of the government's decision to introduce an anti-Muslim hatred czar will have on these kind of events?
It's difficult to say. It could have a disastrous effect, that's for sure, because one of the counter statements that one of these Islamic groups released said that it's Islamophobic to criticize mourning the Ayatollah. So it could really be disastrous.
Worrying times. Emma Schubert from the Henry Jackson Society, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Now, the Muslim Student Council, which represents Abu Dhabi Islamic societies in the UK, said the societies have always operated in accordance with English law, adding,
the MSC rejects the fake issue of Shia extremism. Extremism is a vague term that is used to demonise Muslims within the Islamophobic war on terror matrix.
There you have it. Now up next, train passengers face major disruption after a massive fire forced Scotland's busiest station, Glasgow Central, to shut down completely.
There's really, really worrying pictures there, and a beautiful building as well.
Yeah,
it's a piece of history.
it really is. There was a fire started in a vape shop nearby. But first, we're going to give you the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest holiday sun forecast. So there's more rain on the way for parts of Spain and Italy, but for a lot of the Mediterranean, it does look like it will start to settle down middle part of the week. At the moment, still some chilly weather for the Canaries, but even there it will warm up as we go through the next few days. But you can see plenty of rain for parts of Spain and Italy, but already some sunshine down towards Turkey and Greece, and that will become much more widespread, as I mentioned, across the Mediterranean as we go through Wednesday and Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless.
I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 13 minutes to 11.
It is, and we've got our Home Security Editor, Mark White, back in the studio. Smoke billowing over Beirut. The bombardments continue.
Yes, and indeed, we've also had a significant uptick, it seems, in munitions fired from Iran as well. Now, that might be in response to the fact that the Iranian regime, have their new supreme leader, the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Mustafa Khamenei. You're looking there at images of Beirut. Now, Beirut is important because that is this area here, the Dahia area of Beirut, is the stronghold of the terror group Hezbollah, the proxy of Iran that has been funded and supported for so long by Iran. Now, this terror group was significantly degraded by Israel. You remember after October 7th, and it then joined in the war against Israel. Israel took its offensive to Hezbollah, invaded southern Lebanon, and dealt with, to a large degree, the threat from Hezbollah, which had been, there were still exchanges of fire, but nothing like the level it had been at. But they've decided, of course, to get into this fight, and that means you are now seeing a very decisive operation from the IDF and the Israeli Air Force getting in there, bombing key Hezbollah targets, not just in Beirut, but also their strongholds in the Bekaa Valley in southern Lebanon as well. And I spoke about what's been happening in terms of the missiles and drones that are still coming over from Iran. That is of concern. It's got to be, because on the 10th day of this conflict, they still have the capacity to launch missiles and drones at a reduced scale. But as I say, I think there was a bit of an uptick overnight, probably in response to the appointment of the new supreme leader.
He's even more brutal than his father, apparently,
well,
from what I've read this morning.
There's not a huge amount that's known about him, except that, yes, as you say, he's a hardliner. He is very close to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which props up that regime. It's at the very core of the regime itself. So they have his back, but of course Israel and the United States will be going after him.
He's number one target.
Well, he now is, since he was elevated to the position of supreme leader. I should say, with these strikes that are becoming into Israel and the Gulf states, we've got reports that there has been 1 death and 2 serious injuries as a result of weapons fire from Iran into central Israel. And then there have also been strikes again on Bahrain, on explosions heard over the United Arab Emirates as well. So they're still getting, regularly hammered by Iran as well, which is probably why we're seeing jitters on the oil markets, the prices going up.
Yeah, because we were initially seeing quite a reduction in the frequency of strikes from Iran. But if that's going up again, it may be questions about whether or not the missile launchers have been knocked out.
Maybe just it is because the...
I think it's probably a response to the new supreme leader.
Yeah. Show of strength.
And listen, it's all relative. Although there's been a bit of an uptick, it's still vastly reduced from what it was in the first couple of days from Iran.
All right,
Mark, thank you very much.
Now, Scotland's busiest railway station is closed all day after a major blaze in part of a building next door to it collapsed last night.
Well, the former borough commander of the London Fire Brigade, Steve Doonany, joins us now. Steve, thank you so much for joining us this morning. An absolutely enormous fire. As a firefighter yourself, how many fire groups do you think will have been involved in this, firefighting groups, and what are their chances of bringing it under control?
Good morning. I think so. From what I've seen on the Scottish Fire and Rescue website, there were 18 fire appliances. There are 18 regular appliances and 3 height vehicles. So they are what you might call cherry pickers that can douse the fire from overhead. That sounds pretty similar to what, to a similar sized fire in London will probably attract 20 to 25 fire engines. So that is a massive operation for the fire brigade. Even in London, these are probably fires that would occur once or twice a year. In Scotland, maybe once every couple of years. So a fairly significant fire.
And the station closed down for a whole day. Steve, even when they brought the fire under control, there'd then be the big programme about what caused it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's been some talk of there being a fire in a vape shop, and it will take some time, particularly with the building destroyed. It may never. It may come down to a balance of probabilities as to what the fire, unless there's really good witness testimony from whoever was in the shop at the time. It will come down to a balance of probabilities. But I think the big concern that people might have here is, why did the fire spread so quickly? But we look at that building that's about 170 years old. It would have been built as most likely as a single building on that whole corner, but over the years it would have been subdivided into individual shops and individual premises. And when people do these subdivisions, they're not required necessarily to build proper firewalls. So you would have, particularly in older buildings, you might have false ceilings in place. You might have hidden voids such as a lift shaft. And once that fire gets beyond the room that you can see, so creeps up behind, maybe some pipes that are going for a wall, then the fire really runs out. It's invisible. It's hidden from the firefighters. It runs out of control.
Steve, I'm so sorry, we are going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Amazing. Such a major blaze in a major city centre like
They
Glasgow.
plan for that. Well, plenty more to come, especially on the planned increases to petrol prices as a result of the conflict in Iran. Do stick with us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Bit of a grotty day out there today. Not a huge amount of sunshine for many of us, and there is a bit of rain as well, particularly across western parts. There are a fair few fronts around the UK at the moment, and it's these that are bringing the often cloudy skies and spells of rain as well. Like I said, mainly towards the west. That's where it's going to be dampest. None of the rain looks particularly heavy, but worth bearing in mind, we could see a couple of showers developing across some eastern and southeastern parts, and if they do, couldn't rule out some of these turning quite heavy. But towards the east, generally staying quite dry, often cloudy, despite the fact that there won't be a huge amount of sunshine for many of us. Temperatures, if anything, look like they're going to be a little bit higher than yesterday, mid-teens, particularly towards the southeast. Staying often cloudy, staying a bit damp and grotty for many as we go into this evening. A bit of sunshine towards eastern parts of Scotland, maybe towards the far west as well, but for most it's a cloudy picture. There'll be some damp weather around, a bit of light drizzly rain in many places, some thick cloud coming in across parts of Northern Ireland later on as well, and across much of England and Wales. Yes, there will be some breaks in the cloud perhaps, but generally it is going to stay pretty grey, and there will be a bit of rain at times too. It's a similar story really as we go overnight. Outbreaks of rain, none of them particularly heavy, but they are pushing their way northeastwards, and then a band of slightly more persistent rain comes in onto some parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. There may be some breaks in the cloud, but generally a lot of cloud keeping temperatures from falling too low, so not an especially fresh start to the day. Fairly mild, but again it could be quite grotty in places, some low clouds, some mist, some murk, that kind of thing. And then we see more persistent rain pushing its way eastwards into parts of southern Scotland, the far northwest of England, also western parts of Wales, some outbreaks of rain here, a few outbreaks of rain further west. The best chance of any brightness will be towards the southeast, but here temperatures a few degrees down on today. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Monday, the 9th of March, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, some breaking news this past hour. Keir Starmer has come out fighting. The Prime Minister has rebuked Donald Trump after the US President criticised the UK's lack of support in Iran.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain.
Well, be prepared at the pumps because motorists are braced for an all-time high of petrol pumps as the escalating conflict with Iran is driving up global prices.
And the Prime Minister has today tried to reassure people that the cost of living is at the forefront of his mind, amid warnings that the war could push up household energy bills and food costs too.
Well, people very concerned about prices here at a petrol station in North London. Someone told me earlier they're filling up today because they're worried prices could be rising even further over the coming few days. Another person told me if prices get any higher, they'll simply be forced to park their car and use public transport instead.
And as oil reaches record-breaking levels, soaring past $100 a barrel, Donald Trump claims this is a small price to pay for the eradication of Iran's nuclear program.
And the royal family prepares to celebrate Commonwealth Day with a special ceremony. Stay tuned to find out more.
Well, the King calls on the Commonwealth's 3 billion citizens to focus on what unites us rather than divides us, but he does acknowledge that the world is increasingly fragmented as the war in Iran and elsewhere rages on.
So you'd get Prize of Diplomat of the Year, wouldn't he, Trump? You know, small price to pay to eradicate Iran's nuclear program. If you look at the White House website, it says it's already been eradicated, Iran's nuclear program, from the 12-day war last summer. So if so, why are they bombing again?
Bringing down prices was a key plank of Trump's election campaign, and cutting the costs for ordinary families, bringing down inflation.
Kept showing that loaf of bread, saying how much did this cost when Biden got in, how much does it cost now, and it was a big difference upwards.
So saying that it will come down eventually or this will be temporary is one thing, but saying that it doesn't matter, I don't think that will go down well. Yeah. Of course, it is his last term. He's not standing for election again. I wonder if it's making him a bit reckless.
And the war in Iran does not have much support with American voters anyway. Of course, they are slightly insulated against fuel prices because they have so much fracking, they're largely self-sufficient. Unlike us.
Absolutely. But
Unlike
it's
us.
going to expose splits within the Republican Party because people are saying that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, he's won the battle to go to war in Iran. J.D. Vance has been very quiet. Of course, he was just 2 weeks ago saying it would not be in America's interest to do this.
You never hear a word from the Vice President, do you?
Not at the moment. Normally, he's very vocal.
So as ever wants to know what you think, hear what you think, so send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Miriam, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has defended his response to the crisis in the Middle East after repeated criticism from US President Donald Trump.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make.
While meeting members of the public, Sir Keir Starmer also said the UK economy was in a better place than it had been in 2022, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine triggered an energy price shock. He did acknowledge, though, that the longer the conflict with Iran goes on, the more likely the impact on our economy. That says G7 nations will hold an emergency meeting today to discuss surging oil prices as crude jumped above $100 a barrel over the escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. It comes as investor uncertainty surrounding the war deepens, with fears growing of a prolonged conflict across the Middle East. Stock markets across Asia also fell early today. The sudden drop meant an emergency circuit breaker was activated that halted trading for 20 minutes. About a fifth of the world's oil supply is usually shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, but traffic through the narrow passage has all but halted since the war started a week ago. The Prime Minister has insisted the economy is resilient and well placed to absorb the likely impact on households and businesses. Shadow's Science Technology Minister Julia Lopez says the government has put the public in a very weak position.
People are going to be really worrying. It's not just about people's energy bills at home. And the price cap's going to be lasting until June. So there is a short-term bit of alleviation that the government has some time to think about what is the right energy intervention, and similarly with the fuel duty rise. But in the intervening period, they need to look very closely at whether these rises can go ahead and what's in the bag for them. As I say, I would be looking at some of the green levies, but the put itself in a very perilous financial situation. They've made us financially weaker, and that's the problem. I'm not sure that the government is in a position to put forward very comprehensive cost of living packages.
Meanwhile, Communities Secretary Steve Reed says the economy is strong enough to weather the economic storm caused by the Middle East war.
No contracts for drilling oil from the North Sea have been cancelled, so we're still drilling oil from the North Sea. Even if we were to drill more, it would have zero impact on the price of oil in this country because the price is set globally. So we could increase capacity. It would not help one iota with the cost of living. What will help is moving away from dependence on fossil fuels, and we see how expensive they are. We see how subject they are to crises, whether it's the Middle East or Ukraine. Move from that to taking back control of our energy by generating more of it here at home. That's wind, wave, solar, nuclear, so that the British people are in charge of our own British energy.
It says Iran has chosen Mahsa Khamenei to succeed his father as the country's new supreme leader. He's a mid-ranking cleric with close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, and he was elected by Iran's 88-member Assembly of Experts. Khamenei is said to have his own links to the UK, owns several properties across the country, including high-end apartments in Kensington, totalling more than £50 million in value. Earlier, Sir Keir Starmer spoke to Donald Trump on the phone about the country's military cooperation in the region now, in what appeared to be a positive signal a day after the US president posted on social media suggesting the UK's help was too late. Mr Trump has repeatedly hit out at Sir Keir Starmer's decision not to grant permission for the first wave of military action against Iran. The Prime Minister later granted permission for defensive US action against Iranian missile sites from UK bases, and 4 American bombers landed at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire, and the US started using British bases for specific defensive operations. In other news, Scotland's busiest railway station is closed all day after a major blaze in which part of a building next door to it collapsed last night. No trains will run to or from the high-level platforms at Glasgow Central Station, while trains that run through the low-level platforms will not call there. The fire took hold of the Victorian buildings neighbouring the station, and the dome at one corner collapsed. However, Network Rail said it had not identified any significant damage to the station itself and no reported injuries. Gerry Adams has arrived at the High Court in London for the start of a civil trial in claims brought by 3 men injured in provisional IRA bombings. The men are seeking a ruling that he's personally liable for decisions to plant car bombs in London and Manchester in 1973 and 1996. They're seeking just £1 in damages. Adams has stated he had no direct or indirect involvement and has repeatedly denied ever being in the IRA. Elsewhere, several gunshots have been fired into Rihanna's California home. A 30-year-old female suspect was taken into custody following the incident in Beverly Hills on Sunday afternoon. Los Angeles police say the pop star was at home at the time, but it's unclear whether her partner A$AP Rocky or their 3 children were inside. It's believed that 7 to 9 rounds from an AR-15 rifle were fired, with 4 striking the house. No injuries have been reported, with LAPD's Robbery and Homicide Division launching an investigation. And a Clumber Spaniel named Bruin has been crowned a Best in Show at Crufts 2026 at the NEC in Birmingham. 4-year-old Bruin from Somerset beat 18,000 dogs from around the world over the last 4 days to claim the show's top honour on Sunday. It's the first time a Clumber Spaniel has won Best in Show since 1991. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a look at the finance. The pound will buy you $1.3346 and €1.1547. The price of gold, £3,831.75 per ounce. The FTSE 100 is at 10,169 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, the Prime Minister's hit back against Donald Trump after the US President's latest attack on the UK's lack of support, he says, for the war against Iran.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yeah.
And Sir Keir Starmer also tried to reassure people that the cost of living is at the forefront of his mind as Britain faces a potential energy crisis brought on by that war.
Well, the conflict in the Middle East has caused a record-breaking spike in the price of oil, which is now soared above $100 a barrel for the first time in years.
And at any moment now, we're expecting the French President, Emmanuel Macron, to land in Cyprus, pushing France to the front of Europe's military response to the conflict. And GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins us now. Extraordinary. Macron going to Cyprus, where the British have a defence base.
Humiliation.
You know, this just goes from bad to worse.
Yeah.
Could this get any more humiliating for the British Prime Minister or the United Kingdom? Because, as you say, this is the French president touching down in Cyprus to meet the Cypriot president and also the Greek Prime Minister to show solidarity and support for Cyprus for this, for the fact that Cyprus has come under attack. The base at RAF Akrotiri struck last week by a drone, we believe, fired by Hezbollah. And of course, France, unlike the UK, has sent naval assets to Cyprus now, a carrier strike group, the Charles de Gaulle, headed to that area as well. We still have not been able to get HMS Dragon, our Type 45 air defence destroyer. No fault of the Navy, by the way. They're desperately trying to catch up to the politicians' final orders to get out there and get that vessel.
They didn't deliver the order till Tuesday.
Of course.
Tuesday morning of last week.
And it was preparing for a deployment to the high north, completely different kind of deployment. You know, lots of provisions and stores had to be taken out, new provisions and stores put on for a different kind of region that is
We've just got Macron now. If you're listening on the radio, we've got Macron has just landed on being feted by Cypriot dignitaries. That'll be the president, the prime minister, and he is going to lord this over us in such a way.
You've got to say, I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows how these images are going to play. He says, of course, and I'm sure that's a big part of while he's there, to lend support to Cyprus at this very difficult time for the island nation. But in terms of just the optics of this, for the British government, for Sir Keir Starmer, are absolutely terrible. Now, the British government, I'm sure, will tell us that way before Emmanuel Macron, we sent our defence secretary. I'm sorry, but John Healey, you know, as welcome as I'm sure his visit was, it was to tell us what, really, to show a bit of solidarity and support. But in terms of immediate assets, yes, they said, of course, we sent 400 personnel to help bolster the defences there. But whatever we were doing did not stop a drone coming in and impacting RAF Akrotiri. And if that was enough, why are we now scrambling to get HMS Dragon out to the region and potentially our own aircraft carrier after the fact? So the optics of this, there's no doubt, are terrible, whether John Healey was there or not. Our Prime Minister, Air Miles Stammer, as he's called.
Exactly. Never hear Keir.
Never hear Keir.
Never hear
Keir. You know, always likes a foreign joint. But when it comes to heading off to Cyprus, perhaps not.
But you see, his previous Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who's gone, was one of those who was seen as being behind this campaign, because he thought the more Starmer was seen on the world stage, the better he looked. He was doing quite well on the world stage for a while. He appeared to have a good relationship with Trump for a while. He's no longer there.
Well, we've well rehearsed the arguments there about just how damaged, for the time being, and I'm sure it will recover, the special relationship is. There's no doubt the Americans, they are incandescent, as we have seen in multiple posts on Truth Social from Donald Trump, and even on camera, you know, talking about Sir Keir Starmer being no Winston Churchill. We know there is clearly an almighty fallout at the moment. And it has to be hoped that over the sort of medium to longer term, that relationship will be back on track. We know, of course, that Keir Starmer said, well, the special relationship, it's working. We see it every day. The fact the US are using our air bases, yes, they are, but you're tying one hand behind their back and telling them they can only use them for limited purposes.
And Mark, this is what's so fascinating about the French, is that unlike us, they have deliberately kept their defensive capabilities separate from the US. They cooperate, of course, but they're not reliant. And after the Suez Crisis in 1956, we made the decision to always do what America told us from that future. But the French reaction was very different. They deliberately set out to be independent, to make sure that even their nuclear deterrent didn't rely on the US. They're laughing now.
Although that posture is changing now, and France is actively considering putting the nuclear umbrella around European countries as well. But yes, you're right. Listen, I say it again, the Charles de Gaulle strike group is there. They look as though they've been, you know, much more fleet of foot than we have been. As I say, it goes just to show how absolutely wretched our defences are after years and years of hollowing out the defence. You know, as successive governments did this, it was expedient, politically expedient, to just, you know, have the veil of still, you know, being absolutely invested in the defence of the realm, while all of the time taking away another frigate there, reducing our 12 Type 45 destroyers, to 6 Type 45 destroyers. Even the new fleet is not being spared from this, of Type 26, these incredible assets. We were supposed to get 13 to replace the ageing Type 23 frigates, of which we only have now 7 in operation, most of them in refit. But that order has been pared back, so it's 8 Type 26, and then in addition, 5 Type 31s, which are not as potent by any means. They're a cheaper frigate, and they won't be anywhere near as well armed, and they won't be submarine hunting frigates, which is their core task.
I suspect Starmer thinks he can't go until our ship is there.
Maybe,
because he would just be, that's all he'll be asked.
Yeah.
Where is it?
That's true.
Yeah.
Still in dry dock, Prime Minister.
Wow.
Pathetic.
Mark
pathetic.
White, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I think, Andrew, there's been so many just unbelievable pictures coming out of the war, all the munitions drop, that we've perhaps forgotten the significance. Cyprus is in the EU. An EU country has been hit.
It has, yeah.
And not much
which has a British military sovereign base on it, which was hit too.
Well, let's move on now to our GB News national reporter. Will Godley joins us now. I think you're at a petrol station, Will, in North London. Now, we've been hearing about what's been happening in the Middle East and in Cyprus, but this conflict is having an impact here in the UK too. Tell us more what you've been hearing about at the petrol station. Well, can't hear Will yet. Hopefully he will be mic'd up and joining us soon. But we are going to start feeling this in our pockets very soon. It's not just petrol.
Well, I mean, we were talking to Howard Cox from the Fair Fuel Association. He says profiteering is happening already.
Yeah.
Because pre-ordered supplies, prices had gone up at the petrol pump, and oil has now gone above $100 a barrel. That's for the first time for a long time, and it could go far, far higher.
Yeah, I saw predictions this morning from some economists saying that it could go up to $250 because even if the war ends quickly, within 4 weeks, let's say, as Trump is promising, sorting out all the insurance policies again in the Straits Formers is not going to be a quick effort.
Yeah, because those ships are not insured to go through at the moment.
Exactly.
We can go back to our petrol station now. Actually, Will Godley, we think we've sorted out his volume. Will, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? I'm hoping
we can.
so.
Well, yes, we can.
I'm here at this petrol station. Yes, I'm perfect, wonderful news. Well, yeah, that war is 4,000 miles away over in the Middle East, but here in the UK, motorists already today telling me they're feeling the cost of that war as they're filling up their cars. One person told me he's coming today after seeing those pictures from the Middle East over the weekends because he's worried prices are going to continue to rise over the coming weeks. He doesn't need to drive up north until the weekend, but wanted to fill his car up today while prices are not going any higher than they are at the moment. Another lady told me if prices go any higher, she would have to leave her car parked on her driveway and be forced to take public transport because she couldn't afford to fill her car up with petrol anymore. If you take a look at the prices behind me, here the prices for a litre of unleaded 146.9, the cost of a litre of diesel 161.9. Now that's gone up considerably since the start of this war in Iran, when the average price of petrol here in the UK was 132.8p per litre. So a large rise, but still a long way off from their record of 191.5p per litre back in 2022, and diesel was 199p per litre. Now that was, of course, after Russia invaded Ukraine, and that pushed up the price of oil. But we have seen today the cost of oil rise above $100 per barrel, and that's the highest it's been since 2022, when petrol was at its record-breaking price here in the UK. Now, the RAC saying it takes about 2 weeks for the wholesale cost of oil to filter through to the forecourts here at petrol stations, and earlier on today the government told us they're monitoring the situation on an hourly basis.
Okay.
No contracts for drilling oil from the North Sea have been cancelled, so we're still drilling oil from the North Sea. Even if we were to drill more, it would have zero impact on the price of oil in this country because the price is set globally. So we could increase capacity. It would not help one iota with the cost of living.
Steve Reed talking to us on GB News a little bit earlier on. And now, why has the price of oil gone up? Well, it's all down to that war in Iran, of course, launched by the US and Israel, targeting key oil infrastructure in the region, causing big knock-on impacts on the creation of new oil into the global supplies, but also getting oil out of the region. With the Strait of Hormuz, many tankers unable or unwilling to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, causing key impacts on the price of oil. Well, Rachel Reeves this afternoon is going to be on a call with other G7 leaders to discuss what they can do about the rising cost of oil and what they can do for people in the UK who will be feeling the pinch. Of course, back in 2022, when the price of oil was at very, very high levels and causing petrol prices to be at record-breaking levels, of course, the government introduced the energy price cap. Well, no word from the government whether anything similar would be introduced at the moment, and prices here at the forecourt are not yet at those record-breaking levels. Steve Reed saying there's no cause for concern. And Donald Trump, of course, we've been hearing short-term oil prices are a very small price to pay for America and world safety and peace.
Will Godley, thank you so much. That's GB News national reporter Will Godley, and of course we will keep you up to date on all those rising prices on the international markets.
Well, coming up next on Britain's Newsroom, Sarah Ferguson has been humiliated as she faces a string of rejections over a new Hollywood book deal. We'll be going through that and more with our illustrious panel, Judita Da Silva and Claire Muldoon. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's 26 minutes past 11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Case.
Got our panel with us, political commentator Claire Muldoon and the journalist Judita Da Silva. Now, does this woman have any shame whatsoever? Who could I be talking about?
Certainly not me. Certainly not Miriam or the lovely Judita. Who are you talking about, Mr.
I might be talking
Pearce?
about Sarah Ferguson.
She's shameless. She really is, isn't she? She's just an absolute abomination. And what is it we're hearing today? Her book deal has fallen through.
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth was that even in scope to have anything like a book deal? What was she going to write about?
But what's she supposed to do, Judita?
I was about to say, like, when things this ludicrous happen, I try to make sense of it. If you look at Sarah Ferguson, when she first fell from grace with the Royals, she had to pivot very quickly, and it worked for her. She went to America. She was on every TV show. And what was her spin back then?
Weight loss.
I was one of the royal wives, and I was Diana's friend. That's what catapulted her, and it worked so much. I think she was even on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she sold books. She was on television shows. This has created a sense of comfort and entitlement that this is my thing, and it has put money in the bank and enabled her to sustain herself. Now that it has happened again, once you've understood the dynamics of America, when it comes to showbiz, nothing is really out of bounds, but it depends on who's doing it. That's where she's read the room wrong. They want nothing to do with Epstein or his associates. So it doesn't matter if you've got a sexy story to sell, it's the Epstein story. We don't want to touch it. So that's where she hasn't failed to read the room. But I can understand the motivation because that scandal sells in the US.
And there was talk of $1.5 million.
That would be the price tag for someone in the centre of a scandal willing to tell all to one outlet. That's the price tag.
I'm surprised the room allowed the door to be open to her to actually pitch this
That's shocking.
as a memoir. I think that is equally as shocking. But thankfully, rightfully, they've slammed that door and she's now out of that room. So stop pitching,
But then also we should think about, when you look at the royal family, for the outsiders that come in, what is life like for you beyond that? Because there's an eradication of individual personality that has to happen for you to be imbibed into the firm. But then should something fall apart, it is a repeated pattern that they're almost non-entities when they go out into the real world.
Well, do you know what was lovely? Seeing Princess Anne at Murrayfield on Saturday, when Mario Tuileegi, who's the captain of the Scotland team, he always goes in for the hug, but he always knows he's not going to get the hug. And, of course, Scotland had a tremendous game on Saturday against France. And he went in for the hug to pick up the game. She just went like that as well. She epitomises, for me, the brilliance of the royal family.
But as you said, she is a blood member of the royal family. And I think you've got a great point, Judita. I mean, obviously, looking at somebody like Princess Catherine, she's extremely popular. She is obviously on course to become queen, and she hasn't. But like Judita said, if something happened in that relationship, the royal family would close ranks around William and the children because they are the heirs to the throne. Where would she be left?
And also notice that it always happens with the women, because when you think back to Princess Margaret and her series of relationships, those men never really suffered when it came to the breakdown of her relationships. They never suffered the way women, and there's this desire to crucify the woman on the altar of public opinion.
But this woman is a special case, isn't she? Because I read in one of the Epstein files, Prince Andrew hawking around to pay off her £6 million in debts. That was in 2010. How does anybody get into debt to the tune of £6 million if they've got no money? What was she spending? She was just extravagant, greedy, entitled.
And that home in Sunnydale, that was left empty for ages. That turned into a bit of a tip.
And she would travel always with a great entourage. Always, like she was still a member of the royal family, which she isn't. They should have taken that word Duchess off of her right at the very beginning.
Needs to plan long-term and realise the scope of problems they have when it comes to Andrew and Fergie, because these are two symbiosed individuals within their mentality, entitlement and bad behaviour. Because they've been separated, that triggers a level of desperation, as well as also narrowing their scope of existence as well. When you make personalities like that desperate, the bad behaviour is just going to grow exponentially. So for me, what I would do is just put the two of them together somewhere and then barricade them.
The Ascension Islands is quite nice at this time of year.
So's Iran.
Well, I think exile, like the Duke and Duchess of Windsor back in the...
Who's heard from the
30s
French
was
royals in
probably
exile? Just exile them somewhere, but make sure they have each other. Because then there's a way that they can sustain each other mentally, and that way they become less of a problem. But the worst thing you could do is make a badly behaved person desperate.
We have one consolation in all this. We haven't seen her now for some weeks, Fergie. And may that may that last.
I feel for her.
Do you?
Miriam.
No.
He does, because she's what it looks like when everything goes wrong with someone at that level.
Self-inflicted.
It might be, but you've still got to put yourself in a position of what's she got left now in life, and I think that's really hard.
She's got two nice daughters. She's got grandchildren.
Well, some of us get to make mistakes without the whole world finding out about it.
She's been making them for 25 years. She never learns. That's the problem.
Should we have some news?
Yes.
We've got Tatiana already with our 60-second news update.
Miriam, thank you very much. The top stories. The Prime Minister has defended his response to the crisis in the Middle East after repeated criticism from US President Donald Trump.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make.
It says G7 nations will hold an emergency meeting today to discuss surging oil prices as crude jumped above $100 a barrel over the escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. And Iran has chosen Mojtaba Khamenei to succeed his father as the country's new supreme leader. He's a mid-ranking cleric with close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, and he was selected by Iran's 88-member assembly of experts. Scotland's busiest railway station is closed all day after a major blaze in which part of a building next door to it collapsed last night. Those are the latest headlines. More in half an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
They're here. Tom and Anna, what's coming up on the show?
I know everyone is very, very concerned about the state of the economy right now, not just in this country, but around the world. And coming into the studio in around an hour's time is a man who used to chair Donald Trump's Economic Council of Advisors. He's over in London just for a few days, and he's coming in because he's got a new book out on the causes of recessions, one of which, throughout the 300 years of history that he's looked at, is energy shocks.
Right.
So this is really, really significant. How long this continues to go on, how much the supply of oil particularly is constrained, has massive implications for...
What's his name, Tom?
Tyler Goodspeed.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
That's
and
a scoop.
also, well, today it's Commonwealth Day.
Yeah.
The second Monday in March since 1977. And... do you know the Commonwealth represents about a third of the world's population?
Wow.
And so the King will do his normal Westminster Abbey thing with all the sort of leaders of the Commonwealth all getting together. And that's the first time the whole family has sort of got together on an event this year. So we will... That's obviously about 3 o'clock, so that's after us, but we'll be prepping everybody and everybody ready.
We were speculating whether Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice will be there. I would say certainly not.
God, no, why?
Difficult.
Yeah.
But speaking of royal families and dynasties, there's also a new leader in Iran.
Yes.
and it's the son of the chap that was there before.
Thought they overthrew a monastic dynasty.
Yeah, it has a bit of a Richard
monarchical
Cromwell
dynasty.
feel to
Yeah,
it,
it does.
But
he must be the job with the lowest life expectancy in the world right now.
Well, this is the thing. We're probably not going to see him pop his head far above the sand dunes, are we?
Well, I doubt that he's going to be any different from his father because...
Apparently he's even more brutal.
Yeah, because the regime killed his mother, his father, his wife and one of his children, so that's not going to be good at all.
Well, thank you both. That's all coming up at midday. But up next, we're going to be joined by Joe Bennett, who is the son of a British couple currently imprisoned in a prison in Tehran. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Bit of a grotty day out there today. Not a huge amount of sunshine for many of us, and there is a bit of rain as well, particularly across western parts. There are a fair few fronts around the UK at the moment, and it's these that are bringing the often cloudy skies and spells of rain as well. Like I said, mainly towards the west, that's where it's going to be dampest. None of the rain looks particularly heavy, but worth bearing in mind, we could see a couple of showers developing across some eastern and southeastern parts, and if they do, couldn't rule out some of these turning quite heavy. But towards the east, generally staying quite dry, often cloudy, despite the fact that there won't be a huge amount of sunshine for many of us. Temperatures, if anything, look like they're going to be a little bit higher than yesterday, mid-teens, particularly towards the southeast. Staying often cloudy, staying a bit damp and grotty for many as we go into this evening. A bit of sunshine towards eastern parts of Scotland, maybe towards the far west as well, but for most it's a cloudy picture. There'll be some damp weather around, a bit of light drizzly rain in many places. Some thick cloud coming in across parts of Northern Ireland later on as well, and across much of England and Wales. Yes, there will be some breaks in the cloud perhaps, but generally it is going to stay pretty grey, and there will be a bit of rain at times too. It's a similar story really as we go overnight. Outbreaks of rain, none of them particularly heavy, but they are pushing their way northeastwards, and then a band of slightly more persistent rain comes in to some parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. There may be some breaks in the cloud, but generally a lot of cloud keeping temperatures from falling too low, so not an especially fresh start to the day. Fairly mild, but again it could be quite grotty in places, some low clouds, some mist, some murk, that kind of thing. And then we see more persistent rain pushing its way eastwards into parts of southern Scotland, the far northwest of England, also western parts of Wales, some outbreaks of rain here, a few outbreaks of rain further west. The best chance of any brightness will be towards the southeast, but here temperatures a few degrees down on today. Bye-bye.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 21 minutes to 12. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Joined now by Joe Bennett, who's the son of a British couple who are in jail in Tehran's Evin prison.
Well, Lindsay and Craig Foreman were detained in Iran in January 2025 on a round-the-world motorcycle trip. They've now been sentenced to 10 years for espionage charges last year, which they, of course, deny.
Joe joins us in the studio. Joe, tough at the best of times. Appalling now there's war too to complicate it for your folks.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as you say, a difficult time anyway before this happened. You've got now the added complexity of war and what that brings. You know, we are genuinely scared. We were before, but we are now genuinely worried for their life because of what's going on and, you know, the implications of the actions that have been taken by, you know, the US and Israel.
And are they in prison? Are they together in prison?
So they're held in Evin prison separately.
Right.
So Craig's in with other political prisoners. You've got German nationals, Romanians, Nigerians. You know, there's a lot of nationalities in there. And my mum's held with the Iranian women, who are mostly protesters, to be honest. They've seen a big influx, as you can imagine, from when that happened. But it's a very tense time. You know, I was on the phone to my mum last week when the bombs started to hit, and I've never heard panic like it.
Yeah.
The phone line cut out, and for the 3-4 hours in between the next call, it was I was completely numb. I couldn't move.
Amazed you're getting calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that we are eternally grateful for at the moment because they are able to call direct from the prison phone. And I have to admit, it's the one good thing over the last 15 months that the government have put in place.
Yeah.
There's not much else that I can give a positive outlook on, but that is one of them because it's massive for us at the moment as a family to be able to hear their voices.
And when they went into Iran, they had visas, they had the correct travel documents, they were intending only to pass through the country. What led to their arrest?
Wrong place, wrong time is the only thing that we can account this to. You know, as you say, every legislation that had to be adhered to was, as you say, guide, visas, main hotels. They'd gone off the advice of people that had done the same journey before, so they weren't pioneers. And as you say, there was no reason for them to be arrested other than that they're UK nationals. And
how are they being treated in prison, Joe?
It's a tough one to answer. I mean, in terms, if you comparatively to other people, they're being treated OK, but they're still facing very difficult times. You know, they don't get much nutrition. They eat rice and gristle every day. They're manoeuvred into walls, and you know, it's rough treatment. But compared to others, as I say, it's it can be worse.
Do they get change of clothes, showers?
Showers are, if working, are cold. Change of clothes, not really. I mean, it's unsanitary to say the least. You know, Craig says there's 4 holes in the ground for 180 men. You have to buy toilet roll and things from the shop, which is not always replenished. So, I mean, it's horrendous conditions. Like, I couldn't put it into... I don't do it justice, to be honest with you.
And they're in a cell with how many people?
So they're held together with about 18 people in each cell.
Good God.
And, you know, these are metal bunk beds with no mattresses. It's just a frame. Like, it is rough. There's people on the floor. There's people in the hallways. I mean, it's at capacity and above and beyond now because of what's happened. And as I say, the only good thing that has come from the government, in my eyes, is this phone call. We haven't seen... Even though they've withdrew embassy staff from Tehran, we've not seen any contingency plans. What should they do? Should the prison fall? Should the regime fall? Where do they go? What do they do? The only advice they've been given is to do a risk assessment on the ground if that comes in. It's like, that's just mental.
And before the war, what was the prospect of them being released? Was the British government actively trying to get them released?
Behind closed doors is what they say, right? And there's no proof or there's no signs of progression that I can see, and that's what I have to base it off of. So my assumption is that they're doing nothing, and realistically, will I be happy with what they do until they're home? Probably not. But we don't get given any indications to what's happening. I mean, Hamish Faulkner has invited the Iranian ambassador, but again, if it's to have the same conversations, those conversations haven't worked for the last 15 months. There has to be a change. And, you know, with the new Ayatollah that's been announced, if Keir Starmer had some cojones and a bit of a backbone, he'd be on the phone to him and say, look, why don't you try and do some good? You've taken over. Release the prisoners. Let's start to draw a line in the sand. But
what age are your mum and dad?
So 53 and 52. My mum's 53, Craig's 52.
And how is their health?
I think they're bearing up. You know, it's a tough gig for them mentally, physically, spiritually, because the system's made to break people. You know, that is what it is intended to do. We are outstanded by the strength they show every day when they show up for themselves and for the family. I mean, it's heartbreaking but inspiring at the same time. But their health has diminished. You know, they're trying to look after themselves as well as possible. But as I say, for example, if Craig were to go into the yard, which is probably no bigger than this what we're on here, it's backed onto the sewage. It's like he was constantly ill, and they get ill because of that. You know, as I say, it's very, very unsanitary, and it does.
And do they see each other in prison?
I think this is one of the biggest things that affected them mentally, because they were promised by the judge Salavati, who has the nickname the Hanging Judge, which gives you an idea of what he's like. Was promised phone calls to the family and promised to see each other once a week. Back in November, they had to go on hunger strike because neither of those promises were being delivered. Since then, we've had the phone calls. And they've seen each other once a week, but breaks them because they will be sat in a room for a couple of hours waiting to see one another, and then they'll just pull the rug, say, no, it's not happening, blindfolded, taken back to their rooms, and it breaks them. Because it's their only... They haven't spent a day apart for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So to not be able to see each other is one of the hardest things they deal with.
Goodness me. Well, let's hope that if this war does bring down the regime, that could be their release, but no guarantees.
You've got to hope that... Exactly. You've got to hope the intervention brings some good.
Well, we're wishing you all the best, Joe.
Thank
you. And your mum and dad.
Joe Bennett, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Now, still to come, the royal family is preparing to celebrate Commonwealth Day with a special ceremony, but first we're going to give you the weather forecast for some of our top European destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest holiday sun forecast. So there's more rain on the way for parts of Spain and Italy, but for a lot of the Mediterranean, it does look like it'll start to settle down middle part of the week. At the moment, still some chilly weather for the Canaries, but even there it'll warm up as we go through the next few days. But you can see plenty of rain for parts of Spain and Italy, but already some sunshine down towards Turkey and Greece, and that will become much more widespread, as I mentioned, across the Mediterranean as we go through Wednesday and Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you until 7.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in, the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages. Because the news is going to happen. So get a head start today. Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition. Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Now, just a few moments ago, the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was speaking about the Iranian war, how it's impacting us. Let's take a listen to her.
I'm very, very worried about families out there who will be thinking about how to fill up their car, their energy bills. And just last week, Rachel Reeves had an opportunity to cut fuel duty, and she didn't do so. Instead, she's going to be lifting it in September. That's one of the biggest things that they could be doing. And tomorrow, I'm going to be putting a vote in Parliament for us to make sure that we keep fuel duty as low as possible for all those struggling families out there. The party that has been standing by our troops throughout has been the Conservative Party. Just as we were strong on the conflict in Ukraine, we're being strong on making sure that our bases are being protected. Keir Starmer can't even send a warship out. Last week he told us it was going out. France has sent a warship out to Cyprus. I don't believe that they have a base there. President Macron is there right now. What is our Prime Minister doing? He's complaining that I'm criticising him. My job is not to give him a pat on the back. My job is to make sure that he looks after the national interest, and he needs to move quickly.
Well, interesting, of course, lots of commentary on the fuel prices coming up.
Certainly is. Now, the royal family is preparing to attend a service at Westminster Abbey to honour Commonwealth Day. Remember, Commonwealth is, as Nara Koo was saying, a third of the population. The BBC has, for the first time since 1989, cut live coverage, but we will be there with our very own Cameron Walker, who's at Westminster Abbey. Cameron.
Good morning. From a very noisy, Andrew, Westminster Abbey, we have at least two separate protest groups going on ahead of the Commonwealth Day service. The King in his Commonwealth Day message urging the 3 billion citizens of the Commonwealth, 56 nations, let's forget, to focus on what unites us rather than divides us. But as you can see, we have, well, the classic Republican protesters, not my king, but we also have a group of Cameroonians who are protesting against the war and the alleged human rights violations in that country. Nonetheless, the King will be here later on with the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales, Princess Anne and Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, alongside the Prime Minister, senior government ministers and High Commissioners of the Commonwealth realms, trying to focus on that unity that the Commonwealth has stood for so many decades. We're expecting around 1,800 people inside the Abbey. The King saying untapped potential for prosperous trade between trusting partners. And that's the point, isn't it? As the world is kind of focusing on the conflicts in Iran and Ukraine and elsewhere in the world, the King is using his Commonwealth Day message to try and remind us all about what unites the 56 nations, and hopefully perhaps that can bring more trade, or at least that's what he and the governments will hope.
Cameron Walker, thank you very much for that. Looking forward to more coverage of that on GBNews.
Always a very colourful occasion, that one, so stay tuned for that. Now, up next, it's going to be Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Nana. We're going to see you tomorrow.
Yes, well, then we'll have lots more, of course, on the developing situation in Iran. And I think one of the aspects we've not talked about today is Iran attacking its neighbours in the Gulf and what that means for their oil supply, for their water supply.
I know, and the irony is we've seen Israel attack Iranian oil installations, which will badly affect their economy. But, of course, what they're trying to do is damage the whole of the Gulf.
Well, the US not very pleased with that, if reports are to be believed, and saying that was not what was agreed in advance.
There's going to be more coverage today of President Macron lording it over us in Cyprus. He's got there long before the Prime Minister. Of course he has.
At the top of the steps of the aeroplane with his aviator
Oh,
sunglasses
God,
on.
it's sickening, isn't it? I can't stand him at the best of times, but he's got one over our Prime Minister, not for the first time.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Bit of a grotty day out there today. Not a huge amount of sunshine for many of us, and there is a bit of rain as well, particularly across western parts. There are a fair few fronts around the UK at the moment, and it's these that are bringing the often cloudy skies and spells of rain as well. Like I said, mainly towards the west. That's where it's going to be dampest. None of the rain looks particularly heavy, but worth bearing in mind, we could see a couple of showers developing across some eastern and southeastern parts, and if they do, couldn't rule out some of these turning quite heavy. But towards the east, generally staying quite dry, often cloudy, despite the fact that there won't be a huge amount of sunshine for many of us. Temperatures, if anything, look like they're going to be a little bit higher than yesterday, mid-teens, particularly towards the southeast. Staying often cloudy, staying a bit damp and grotty for many as we go into this evening. A bit of sunshine towards eastern parts of Scotland, maybe towards the far west as well, but for most it's a cloudy picture. There'll be some damp weather around, a bit of light drizzly rain in many places, some thick cloud coming in across parts of Northern Ireland later on as well, and across much of England and Wales. Yes, there will be some breaks in the cloud perhaps, but generally it is going to stay pretty grey, and there will be a bit of rain at times too. It's a similar story really as we go overnight. Outbreaks of rain, none of them particularly heavy, but they are pushing their way northeastwards, and then a band of slightly more persistent rain comes in onto some parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. There may be some breaks in the cloud, but generally a lot of cloud keeping temperatures from falling too low, so not an especially fresh start to the day. Fairly mild, but again it could be quite grotty in places, some low clouds, some mist, some murk, that kind of thing. And then we see more persistent rain pushing its way eastwards into parts of southern Scotland, the far northwest of England, also western parts of Wales, some outbreaks of rain here, a few outbreaks of rain further west. The best chance of any brightness will be towards the southeast, but here temperatures a few degrees down on today. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away with this very latest Benivan 4-berth camper van. This camper van is fully equipped with its own kitchen, bathroom, dinette and plenty of storage. We'll also get your summer sorted with a further £25,000 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck!
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in, the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages. Because the news is going to happen. So get a head start today. Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition. Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 9th of March. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Acquia. Petrol prices could hit £2 a litre for the first time as the Middle East crisis sends oil markets soaring. We'll look at what it could mean for drivers and whether Britain faces another cost of living shock.
Well, with oil prices now the highest they've been since 2022, will we see a return to the record-breaking petrol prices that we saw back in 2022 as well? That's something I'll be asking motorists this afternoon.
Elsewhere, the Prime Minister has rebuked Donald Trump's criticism of Britain's role in the Iran war, saying decisions in Britain's national interest are for him to make.
Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain.
In the meantime, Iran shows no sign of backing down, naming Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late Ali Khamenei, as the regime's new supreme leader. He's already vowed to step up missile attacks on infrastructure.
Within the last hour, the French President Emmanuel Macron has touched down in Cyprus to lend his support to the Cypriot people. But the optics of that look terrible for Sir Keir Starmer.
Elsewhere, ministers launch a plan to combat extremism and promote what they call shared values across Britain. It includes tougher oversight of charities and new reporting systems at universities.
The royal family prepares to celebrate Commonwealth Day. With a special ceremony, we'll have the arrivals and we'll bring you all of the build-up.
The King urging the 3 billion citizens of the Commonwealth to focus on what unites us rather than divides us. But war rages across the world and at least 2 separate protest groups are here in London trying to make their voices heard.
I was going to say, perhaps they'll use that ceremony to step up pressure on removing Andrew from the line of succession at the Commonwealth event, because they'll all be there together.
Well, possibly.
Have we all forgotten about Andrew?
Oh, well, I think
we have.
I think if I were the King, I probably wouldn't want to be speaking about Andrew.
Yeah, but I'm thinking the others, though, who go there will potentially use that as a moment to mention